The alarm screamed through the bridge of the human warship. Commander Jake Harrison jumped from his chair and ran to the main screen. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. His hands shook as he read the message that appeared on the screen. New Haven Colony. Emergency signal lost. All communication dead. Jake felt his stomach drop. New Haven was a peaceful mining colony on a planet called Kepler 442b. 5,000 people lived there. Men, women, and children who had left Earth to start a new life among the stars. Now something had gone very wrong. "Lisa, get our fastest ship ready," Jake told his second-in-command, Captain Lisa Rodriguez. She was a tough woman who had fought in 3 wars. Her dark eyes showed worry as she looked at the screen. "How long since we lost contact?" Lisa asked. 6 hours, Jake replied. They missed their daily check-in at midnight. Lisa nodded and ran to prepare the ship. Jake called his best team together. Dr. Alex Bennett, their science officer, came first. He was a thin man with gray hair who knew everything about alien life forms. Then came Lieutenant Amy Foster, their intelligence expert. She was young, but very smart about reading alien communications. "We leave in 20 minutes, Jake announced. "Something happened to New Haven Colony. We need to find out what." The journey to Kepler 442b took 8 hours. Jake could not sleep during the trip. He kept thinking about the families on New Haven. There were teachers, farmers, miners, and shopkeepers. Normal people who just wanted to live in peace. Many of them had young children. When they arrived at the planet, everything looked normal from space. The colony buildings were still there. The power stations were working, but no one answered their radio calls. "Take us down," Jake ordered. Their ship landed in the colony's main square. Jake and his team put on their spacesuits and walked outside. The first thing they noticed was the silence. New Haven should have been busy with people working, children playing, and machines running. Instead, they heard nothing. Lisa led the team to the colony's main building. The doors were open. Inside, they found something very strange. Breakfast was still on the tables. The food was cold but fresh. Coffee cups sat half full. Personal computers were still running, but no people were anywhere. "It's like they just disappeared," Lisa whispered. Jake felt fear growing in his chest. They searched house after house. In one home, they found toys scattered on the floor. A child's drawing was still wet with paint on the kitchen table. In another house, a baby's bottle sat on the counter. The milk inside was still warm. "Commander, Doctor." Bennett called from the colony's control center. "You need to see this." Jake and Lisa ran to where Bennett was standing. He was looking at a computer screen that showed the colony's security cameras. "I found the recording from this morning," Bennett said. His voice was shaking. "You're not going to like what you see." Bennett pressed a button. The screen showed the colony square at sunrise. People were walking around, starting their day. Children were playing outside before school. Everything looked normal and peaceful. Then the sky changed. Dark shadows moved across the ground. The camera shook as something large passed overhead. Jake saw sleek, crystal-like ships descending from the clouds. They were beautiful but terrifying. The ships were unlike anything humans had ever built. "Zephyrians," Bennett whispered. Jake knew about the Zephyrian Empire. They were an advanced alien race that lived in the outer regions of the galaxy. Humans had met them before, but the meetings were always cold and unfriendly. The Zephyrians thought they were better than all other species. On the screen, the alien ships landed in the colony. Strange, tall beings came out. They moved like liquid metal and had crystal-like skin that reflected light. The Zephyrians carried devices that looked like silver rods. "Watch this part," Bennett said. The aliens pointed their rods at the humans. Bright flashes of light came from the devices. Every human who was hit by the light fell to the ground. They were not dead, just unconscious. The Zephyrians then began collecting the humans, carrying them to their ships like bags of grain. Jake watched in horror as families were separated. He saw fathers trying to protect their children before the alien weapons knocked them out. He saw mothers reaching for their babies as they fell. The aliens showed no emotion. They worked like machines, efficient and cold. "How many people?" Jake asked. Bennett checked his computer. 847 humans lived in New Haven Colony. "All of them taken? Every single one?" Bennett replied. "But Commander, there's something else, something worse." Bennett brought up another screen. This one showed the colony's population records. Jake read the numbers and felt his blood turn to ice. 312 children, he read out loud. Ages from 6 months to 17 years old. Lisa cursed in Spanish. Amy Foster covered her mouth with her hand. Dr. Bennett looked like he was going to be sick. "They took the children," Jake said. His voice was quiet, but filled with rage. The Zephyrians took human children. Jake had been a soldier for 20 years. He had fought in battles across the galaxy. He had seen death and destruction, but nothing had ever made him feel this angry. The Zephyrians had crossed a line that no species should ever cross. "Sir," Amy said, "I'm detecting traces of Zephyrian technology. Some kind of neural disruptor. It would have knocked out the adults instantly." "What about the children?" Jake asked. Amy's face went pale. "Children's brains are different. Still developing. The weapon wouldn't have worked on them as well. They would have been awake, conscious. They would have seen everything." The thought of terrified children watching their parents collapse, then being taken by aliens, made Jake's hands shake with fury. He had a daughter back on Earth. She was 8 years old. If anyone ever took her, he would burn the galaxy to find her. "Commander," Lisa said, "what are your orders?" Jake looked at his team. These were good people, brave people. They had families too. They understood what this meant. "We're going to get those children back," Jake said. "All of them. And we're going to make the Zephyrians pay for what they've done." "Sir," Amy said, "the Zephyrian Empire is huge. They have thousands of ships, advanced technology, and they're spread across dozens of star systems. How can we possibly— I don't care if we have to tear apart every planet in their empire," Jake interrupted. "No one takes human children. No one." Jake activated his communication device. In a few minutes, he would be talking to Admiral Susan Clark, the head of the human colonial fleet. He would tell her what happened. And then the galaxy would learn something new about humanity. They would learn that humans could be peaceful. They could be reasonable. They could be negotiated with and traded with. But if you took their children, you had just signed your own death warrant. The war was about to begin. Admiral Susan Clark stood in the war room of the human fleet headquarters. The room was filled with the most important military officers in human space. Everyone was quiet as they watched the recordings from New Haven Colony. When the footage ended, the silence was heavy and dangerous. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Clark said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with anger. 3 days ago, the Zephyrian Empire committed an act of war against humanity. They have taken 847 of our people. More. Importantly, they have taken 312 of our children. The room remained silent. Everyone knew what this meant. In human culture, nothing was more sacred than protecting children. It was written into their DNA, their deepest instincts. Any species that harmed human children had declared war on all of humanity. "I have already sent messages to every human colony, every military base, every ship in our fleet," Clark continued. "The message is simple. All children will be recovered. No exceptions. No mercy will be shown." Captain Ryan Mitchell sat in the front row. He was the commander of the stealth destroyer USS Retribution. Ryan was a quiet man with cold blue eyes and scars on his face from old battles. He had been a soldier since he was 18 years old. "Admiral," Ryan said, "my ship is ready. Give me a target, and I'll bring our kids home." Clark nodded. "Captain Mitchell, you will lead our special operations. Your job is to track down the Zephyrian ships and find where they took our people." Ryan's team was already assembled. Sergeant Maria Santos sat beside him. She was a small woman with dark hair and fierce eyes. Maria had grown up in the slums of Mars and joined the military when she was 16. She specialized in hostage rescue and close combat. She was also the best soldier Ryan had ever seen. "The intelligence reports show Zephyrian ships moving toward the outer rim," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, who had arrived from New Haven with Commander Harrison. "They're heading for research facilities in uncharted space." Dr. Alex Bennett stood up. "I've been studying Zephyrian technology. They're more advanced than us in some ways, but they have weaknesses. Their neural disruptors can be reversed. Their shield systems have gaps we can exploit." Admiral Clark turned to the room. "Protocol 7 is now in effect. This is a classified directive that hasn't been used in 50 years. Every human ship, military or civilian, is now part of our war effort." Across human space, the message was being received. On cargo ships, merchant vessels, and passenger transports, human crews were given new orders. Weapons were being loaded. Armor was being installed. Ordinary citizens were becoming warriors. Captain Paul Johnson was loading grain onto his cargo. Ship when the military arrived. Paul was a big man with gray hair and gentle eyes. He had been a merchant for 30 years, carrying supplies between colonies. He had never fired a weapon in anger. "Captain Johnson," said the military officer, "your ship is being requisitioned for military service." "I understand," Paul replied. "Those bastards took our kids?" Within hours, Paul's cargo ship was transformed. Military engineers installed plasma cannons on the hull. Marines came aboard with weapons and armor. Paul's peaceful merchant vessel became a warship. Hungry for Zephyrian blood, the same thing was happening on thousands of ships. Teachers, farmers, mechanics, and shopkeepers were taking up arms. The entire human species was mobilizing for war. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian Empire, the aliens were making a terrible mistake. They thought humans were just another primitive species. The Zephyrian High Council met in their crystal palace on their homeworld. Prime Executor Veltar was the leader of the Mrek, Zephyrian Empire. He was tall and thin, with skin that looked like living diamond. His voice sounded like wind chimes when he spoke. "The humans have sent diplomatic protests," Veltar said to his council. "They demand the return of their specimens." "Specimens?" asked another council member. "Is that what they call their offspring?" "They call them children," Veltar replied. "An emotional term. These humans are quite primitive. They form irrational attachments to their young." The Zephyrian Council found this amusing. In their culture, children were raised by the state. Parents had no special connection to their offspring. They could not understand why humans cared so much about their young. "What shall we tell them?" asked the council member. "Nothing," Veltar replied. "We will continue our research. The human children are perfect subjects for our experiments. Their developing brains will help us understand emotional manipulation and psychological control." The Zephyrians had no idea what was coming for them. Back in human space, the hunt had begun. Captain Mitchell's stealth ship was the first to strike. The USS Retribution was invisible to most sensors. It could slip through space like a ghost and hit targets without warning. "Contact," reported the ship's sensor officer. "Zephyrian transport. Vessel heading for the Vega system." "That's one of their research facilities," said Sergeant Santos. "If they're taking our people there, we need to follow." Ryan nodded. Set course for Vega. Prepare for boarding action. The Zephyrian transport ship was large and beautiful. It looked like a work of art made from crystal and metal. But Ryan didn't care about its beauty. He only cared about the human. Children who might be inside. Take us in close, Ryan ordered. Maria, get your team ready. Sergeant Santos checked her weapons. She carried a pulse rifle and several grenades. Her team of Marines followed her to the boarding pods. They were all volunteers who had asked to join the mission when they heard about the children. The boarding pods shot from the USS Retribution like bullets. They crashed into the Zephyrian ship's hull and cut through the metal. Santos and her. Marines poured through the holes, ready for battle. The Zephyrians were not prepared for human fury. They had expected diplomatic protests and trade sanctions. They had not expected armed soldiers breaking down their doors. Surrender, Santos shouted at the first alien she met. The Zephyrian was tall and elegant, with crystal skin that reflected. The corridor lights. The alien made a sound like breaking glass. Santos didn't wait for a translation. She shot him with her pulse rifle. The Zephyrian fell, his crystal skin cracking and leaking silver blood. Santos and her team moved through the ship quickly. They found the cargo hold where the humans were. Being kept. The sight made her sick with rage. The humans were unconscious, floating in tanks filled with green liquid. There were men, women, and children. The children looked so small and helpless in the alien tanks. Some were babies who could barely walk. Get them out of there, Santos ordered. Her team worked quickly to free the humans. The children were the first priority. Santos personally carried a little girl who couldn't be more than 5 years old. The child was unconscious but breathing. Medical team to the cargo bay, Santos called on her radio. We have hostages. Children need immediate attention. While her team freed the humans, Santos hunted down the remaining Zephyrians. She found them in the ship's control room, trying to send a distress signal. Too late, she said, and opened fire. The boarding action took less than 30 minutes. Every Zephyrian on the ship was dead. Every human was rescued. It was the first victory in what would become the bloodiest war in galactic history. Dr. Jennifer Stone, the fleet's medical officer, examined the rescued children. They were alive, but showed signs of drug exposure. The Zephyrians had been keeping them sedated for transport. They're going to be okay, Dr. Stone told Santos. But they've been through something terrible. Some of them might have nightmares for a long time. Santos looked at the sleeping children. The little girl she had carried was now wrapped in a warm blanket. She looked peaceful, but Santos knew she would wake up in a strange place, probably. Scared and confused. We're going to get the rest of them, Santos promised. Every last one. The news of the rescue spread through human space like wildfire. One ship down. Hundreds more to go. The Zephyrians had scattered the human prisoners across their empire. But humans were patient hunters. Admiral Clark received the report with satisfaction. First blood to us, she said. But this is just the beginning. Captain Mitchell, continue. Your search. Find every ship, every facility, every hiding place they have. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. They were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest. They were not the most advanced. But when their children were threatened, they became something else entirely. They became unstoppable. The first real battle happened at Zephyrian Outpost Theta 7. The outpost was built on a small moon that orbited a dead planet. It was supposed to be a secret research facility, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. The Zephyrians thought they were. Safe there. They were wrong. Commander Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of his warship, looking at the enemy base through his telescope. The outpost was beautiful, like all Zephyrian buildings. It was made of crystal and metal that sparkled in. The light of the distant sun But Jake only saw a target. "Intelligence reports say they have 47 human prisoners in that facility," said Lieutenant Amy Foster. 23 of them are children." Jake felt his anger growing. 3 weeks had passed since New Haven Colony was attacked. In that time, human forces had found and destroyed 6 Zephyrian ships. They had rescued over 200 humans, but there were still more than 600 people missing. The children were scattered across the Zephyrian Empire, being used for experiments. "What kind of experiments?" Jake asked. Amy looked at her reports. Her face was pale. "According to the intelligence we gathered from captured Zephyrian computers, they're studying human emotional responses. They want to understand how humans form attachments to their young. They're torturing the children to see how their parents react," said Captain Lisa Rodriguez. She was standing beside Jake, her hands clenched into fists. "Not anymore," Jake said. "Signal the fleet. All ships, attack formation. We're going to hit them hard and fast." The human fleet moved toward the outpost. They had 20 ships, including destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels. The Zephyrians had defensive weapons, but they were not prepared for the fury of human parents. "Fire," Jake ordered. The space around the outpost lit up with weapons fire. Human plasma cannons and missile launchers poured death onto the alien base. The Zephyrian shields flashed and sparked as they tried to absorb the damage. "Their shields are weakening," reported the weapons officer. "We're getting through." The battle was short but brutal. The Zephyrians had advanced technology, but they had never faced an enemy that fought with such desperate fury. Every human in the fleet was thinking about the children trapped in that base. "Shields are down," announced the sensor officer. "The base is defenseless. Prepare boarding parties," Jake ordered. "Lisa, take your team in. Find those children." Captain Rodriguez led 50 Marines to the Zephyrian base. They used small attack ships to break through the outer walls. The Marines wore heavy armor and carried the most powerful weapons humans had ever built. The inside of the base was clean and white, like a hospital. The floors were smooth crystal, and the walls glowed with soft light. It would have been beautiful, if not for what was happening there. Rodriguez found the first group of human prisoners in a section marked Emotional Response Laboratory. The sight made her sick. Human children were strapped to tables, while Zephyrian scientists watched them. The children were awake and crying. Alien machines were attached to their heads, measuring their brain activity. The scientists were studying how fear and pain affected developing human minds. "Open fire," Rodriguez shouted. Her Marines burst into the laboratory. They shot every Zephyrian scientist they could find. The aliens tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The Marines showed no mercy. Rodriguez ran to the nearest child. It was a boy about 8 years old. He was crying and calling for his mother. Rodriguez carefully removed the alien machines from his head. "It's okay," she told him. "You're safe now. We're humans, like you. We're here to take you home." The boy looked at her with wide eyes. "Are you really human?" he asked. "Yes," Rodriguez replied. "We came to get you. All of you." The Marines worked quickly to free the children. They found 23 kids in the laboratory. Some were very young, barely old enough to walk. Others were teenagers who tried to comfort. The smaller children. In another part of the base, they found the adult prisoners. These were the children's parents, teachers, and other colonists from New Haven. They were being kept in small cells, drugged to keep them weak. Dr. Jennifer Stone, the fleet's medical officer, examined the rescued humans. The children were traumatized, but physically unharmed. The adults were suffering from the effects of alien drugs, but they would recover. "How are they?" Rodriguez asked. "The children are scared, but they'll be okay," Dr. Stone replied. "The adults are weak from the drugs, but they're stable. We need to get them to a proper medical facility. Rodriguez nodded. What about the aliens? Any survivors? None, reported Sergeant Maria Santos. We eliminated every Zephyrian in the Na facility. This was becoming the pattern. Human forces were not taking prisoners. They were not interested in negotiation or mercy. The Zephyrians had crossed a line that could not be UNCROSSED. News of the attack spread through the galaxy. Other alien species watched with growing concern. The Galactic Council, which governed relations between different species, called for an emergency meeting. Ambassador Tony Walker represented humanity at the council. He was a calm, diplomatic man who had spent his career negotiating peace between different species. But today he had a different message. The Zephyrian Empire has committed an act of war against humanity, Walker announced to the council. They have kidnapped our children and subjected them to torture and experimentation. This cannot be tolerated. The council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of alien species. Many of them were disturbed by what they were hearing. The Zephyrians had always been arrogant, but this was extreme even for them. What are humanity's demands? Asked the council leader, a wise old creature called the Mediator. Simple, Walker replied. Return every human child immediately and unharmed. Surrender the individuals responsible for this crime. Pay reparations to the victims' families. And if the Zephyrians refuse? Asked the Mediator. Walker's expression did not change. Then we will exterminate their species. The council chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Many alien species had fought wars with each other, but genocide was rare. Most conflicts ended with negotiated settlements. Ambassador Walker, said the Mediator, surely you don't mean total extermination? I mean exactly what I said, Walker replied. The Zephyrians have committed a crime against our children. In human culture, there is no greater sin. They have forfeited their right to exist. The Zephyrian representative, a tall alien named Executor Kethanol, stood up. His crystal skin reflected the lights of the council chamber. The humans are being emotional and irrational, Kethanol said. We are conducting legitimate scientific research. These specimens, children, Walker interrupted. They are called children. They are not specimens. These young humans are helping us understand emotional attachment, Kethanol continued. This research could benefit all species. Walker stared at the Zephyrian. You are conducting torture experiments on children. You will return them immediately, or you will face the consequences. We refuse, Kethanol said. Our research is too important to abandon. Walker nodded slowly. Then you have chosen extinction. The ambassador left the council chamber. Within hours, every human military unit in the galaxy received new orders. The war was no longer about rescue. It was about vengeance. Captain Mitchell's stealth ship USS Retribution was already hunting another target. Intelligence reports showed a convoy of Zephyrian ships heading for their homeworld. The convoy was carrying more human prisoners. 5 ships, reported the censor officer. Heavily armed escort vessels protecting 2 transport ships. The transports will have our people, said Sergeant Santos. We need to disable them without destroying the cargo. Mitchell nodded. Precision strikes. Take out their engines and weapons, but keep the hull intact. The attack came without warning. The USS Retribution appeared from nowhere, its weapons blazing. The Zephyrian escort ships tried to fight back, but they were no match for human fury. I won. The alien ships were destroyed. The transport vessels were left helpless, their engines dead and their weapons offline. Mitchell's boarding parties moved in to secure the prisoners. This time, they found something that made even the hardened Marines angry. The Zephyrians had been separating children from their parents, keeping them in different parts of the ship. The children were crying for their mothers and fathers, who were locked away in another section. "Reunite the families," Santos ordered. "Get the children back to their parents." The moment when the families were reunited was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Parents held their children and wept. Children clung to their mothers and fathers, afraid to let go. Many of the kids had nightmares about the alien experiments, but they were safe now, and the humans were far from finished. Across the galaxy, human forces were striking at every Zephyrian target they could find. Captain Paul, Johnson's converted merchant ship, joined a battle group attacking a Zephyrian supply depot. The former cargo captain had become a warrior, his ship armed with military weapons and crewed by volunteers. "Remember," Johnson told his crew, "we're not just fighting for our own children. We're fighting for all of them. Every human child they took is someone's son or daughter." The attack on the supply depot was devastating. The Zephyrians had stored weapons, food, and medical supplies for their research facilities. When the human ships were finished, nothing was left but burning wreckage. Galaxy was learning something new about. The Zephyrian Empire was beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. In the past month, humans had destroyed 17 research facilities, captured 43 transport ships, and rescued over 400 prisoners. Human attacks were becoming more frequent and more brutal. Prime Executor Valtar called an emergency meeting of the Zephyrian High Council. The beautiful crystal palace where they met was usually a place of calm discussion. Today it was filled with fear and confusion. "The humans are not fighting like a civilized species," complained council members at high. "They take no prisoners. They offer no mercy. They destroy everything in their path." "Perhaps we should consider negotiation," suggested another council member. "We could return some of the specimens in exchange for peace." "Children," Valtar corrected. "The humans call them children, and we will not negotiate with primitives." But even as he spoke, Valtar knew they were in trouble. The humans were fighting with a fury that the Zephyrians had never seen before. Every attack was perfectly coordinated, utterly ruthless, and completely focused on one goal: getting their children back. Admiral Susan Clark stood in the command center of the human fleet, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. Her forces had grown enormously. Every human colony had sent ships and volunteers. Even civilian transports had been converted into warships. "Status report," Clark ordered. "We've rescued 412 humans so far," reported Commander Harrison. 198 of them are children. But we estimate there are still over 400 prisoners scattered across Zephyrian space. "What about their main research facility?" Clark asked. Lieutenant Amy Foster checked her intelligence reports. "It's located in the Kepler 186 system, hidden in an asteroid field. Our sources say it's their primary laboratory for studying human psychology. Most of the remaining children are probably there." Clark nodded. "Then that's where we're going. Signal the fleet. Every available ship is to rendezvous at Kepler 186. The human fleet that assembled at Kepler 186 was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. There were military warships, converted merchant vessels, and even luxury crews. Ships that had been armed with weapons. The crews were a mix of professional soldiers, civilian volunteers, and ordinary people who had taken up arms to save the children. Captain Ryan Mitchell's stealth ship, USS Retribution, was scouting the asteroid field. The main Zephyrian facility was enormous, built into a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a laboratory complex. "It's heavily defended," Mitchell reported. "Automated weapon systems, energy shields, and at least 50 guard ships." "How many prisoners?" SKE, the Admiral Clark. "Our scanners detect over 300 human life signs," Mitchell replied. "Most of them are in the lower levels of the facility. Clark felt her anger growing. 300 humans were trapped in that alien laboratory. Many of them were children who had been subjected to weeks of experimentation and torture. "All ships, prepare for assault," Clark ordered. "We're going in." The battle for the Kepler 186 facility was the largest engagement of the war so far. The human fleet attacked from all directions, overwhelming the Zephyrian defenses with sheer numbers and desperate fury. Captain Paul Johnson's converted merchant ship was in the thick of the fighting. His crew of volunteers fought alongside professional soldiers, united by their determination to save the children. Johnson himself manned one of the ship's weapons, firing at Zephyrian fighters with deadly accuracy. "Direct hit on their shield generator," reported Johnson's weapons officer. "Their defenses are weakening." The asteroid facility's shields flickered and died. Human ships poured through the gap, their weapons blazing. The Zephyrian guard fleet tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "Boarding parties." "Go," ordered Admiral Clark. Hundreds of human Marines launched from their ships in small attack craft. They crashed into the asteroid's surface and began cutting through the outer hull. Leading them was Captain Lisa Rodriguez and her team of specialists. The interior of the facility was a maze of corridors and laboratories. The walls were made of the same crystal material as all Zephyrian buildings, but they were stained with something that looked like blood. The humans moved carefully, checking every room for prisoners and enemies. "Contact," shouted one of the Marines. A group of Zephyrian guards had opened fire from behind a barricade. The aliens were trying to protect their research, but they were no match for human soldiers fighting to save children. Sergeant Maria Santos led the charge against the alien position. Her team moved with deadly precision, using grenades and plasma weapons to clear the barricade. The Zephyrians fell back, but there was nowhere to run. "No prisoners," Santos ordered. "These monsters don't deserve mercy." The fighting was intense, but brief. The Zephyrians were scientists and guards, not professional soldiers. They had never faced an enemy that fought with such desperate fury. Rodriguez found the first group of prisoners in a section marked Psychological Conditioning Laboratory. The sight made her sick with rage. Human children were strapped to chairs, while alien machines projected images into their minds. The children were being brainwashed, their memories altered to make them more compliant test subjects. Some of the kids were crying. Others stared blankly at the ceiling, their minds damaged by the alien experiments. "Get them out of there." Rodriguez shouted. Her Marines worked quickly to free the children. The youngest was a baby girl who couldn't be more than 6 months old. She was unconscious, kept sedated while the aliens studied her developing brain. "Monsters," whispered one of the Marines. "How could they do this to babies?" Rodriguez carefully lifted the infant. The baby was so small and helpless in her arms. She had a daughter at home about the same age. The thought of anyone hurting her child filled Rodriguez with murderous rage. "Find the rest of them," she ordered, "and kill every alien in this place." The Marines spread through the facility, searching for more prisoners. They found adults in one section, teenagers in another, and small children in a third. Each group had been subjected to different experiments. Dr. Jennifer Stone and her medical team worked frantically to treat the rescued humans. Many of the children showed signs of severe trauma. Some had been given alien drugs that affected their memory and behavior. Others had been subjected to painful procedures that left physical and psychological scars. "How are they?" Rodriguez asked. "The physical injuries will heal," Dr. Stone replied. "But the psychological damage, some of these children may never fully recover." The aliens didn't just experiment on their bodies. They tried to break their minds. Rodriguez felt her fury growing. The Zephyrians had not just kidnapped children. They had tortured them, tried to destroy their humanity. There would be no forgiveness. For this crime got in the deepest part of the facility, the Marines found the worst horror of all. A section called Genetic Modification Laboratory contained human children who had been subjected to alien experiments designed to alter their DNA. The Zephyrians had been trying to create hybrid creatures, part human and part alien. Command. This is Rodriguez, she reported. We need medical teams down here immediately. They've been changing the children at the genetic level. The rescued children from this section were barely recognizable as human. Their skin had a crystal-like quality, and their eyes reflected light like mirrors. They were still alive, but the aliens had tried to transform them into something else. Can you reverse it? Rodriguez asked Dr. Stone. I don't know, the doctor replied. The genetic changes are extensive. We'll need the best scientists on Earth to study this. Some of these children may never be fully human again. Rodriguez looked at the modified children. They were still recognizable as the kids they had once been, but the alien changes were obvious. One little boy had skin that sparkled like diamond. A teenage girl's hair had turned silver and seemed to glow with its own light. What we can do is love them, Dr. Stone continued. They're still human where it matters most, in their hearts and minds. Rodriguez nodded. Get them to the medical ships. All of them. We're taking everyone home. The battle for the facility was over, but the Marines were not finished. They hunted down every Zephyrian scientist and guard in the complex. The aliens tried to hide in secret chambers and emergency shelters, but there was no escape. Please, begged one Zephyrian scientist, as Sergeant Santos found him hiding in a storage room. I was only following orders. The research was important for understanding your species. Santos looked at the alien without emotion. You tortured children, she said simply, and pulled the trigger dot. By the time the facility was cleared, over 200 Zephyrian scientists and guards were dead. The humans had rescued 307 prisoners, including 143 children. But the cost of their captivity was enormous. Many would need years of therapy to recover from their trauma. Admiral Clark received the report while standing on the bridge of her flagship. The successful rescue was a victory, but she felt no joy. Too many children had been hurt. Too many families had been torn apart. Admiral, said Commander Harrison, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian homeworld. They want to negotiate. Clark's expression hardened. Put them through. The image of Prime Executor Veltar appeared. The Zephyrian homeworld had never been attacked before. For thousands of years, it had been the center of a mighty empire that stretched across dozens of star systems. The planet was beautiful, with crystal cities that rose like mountains from the surface. Billions of Zephyrians lived there, believing they were safe behind their powerful defenses. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Susan Clark stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the largest fleet in human history prepare for battle. Over 3,000 ships had gathered for the final assault. Every human colony had contributed vessels. Military warships flew alongside converted cargo ships, passenger transports, and even small personal craft whose owners had volunteered. To fight. Final status report, Clark ordered. All ships ready for battle, reported Commander Jake Harrison. The stealth squadrons are in position. Ground forces are prepared for planetary assault. Clark nodded. In the past 2 months, human forces had systematically destroyed the Zephyrian Empire. Research facilities had been captured, transport fleets eliminated, and military bases reduced to rubble. They had rescued over 700 human prisoners, including all but 37 children. Those last 37 children were somewhere on the planet below. Intelligence reports suggested they were being held in the capital cities. Central Research Complex. The Zephyrians were using them as hostages, hoping to negotiate their way out of total destruction. Open a channel to the planet, Clark ordered. The image of Prime Executor Veltar appeared on the main screen. The alien leader looked desperate. His usually perfect crystal skin was cracked and dull. Behind him, Clark could see smoke rising. From damaged buildings. "Admiral Clark," Veltar said. "Our cities are burning. Millions of civilians are fleeing in panic. Surely this has gone far enough. Where are our children?" Clark asked simply. "They are safe," Veltar replied. "But they will remain so only if you withdraw your forces. We propose a final exchange. The remaining human children for the survival of our homeworld." Clark felt her anger growing. Even now, facing the destruction of their entire civilization, the Zephyrians were trying to use human children as bargaining chips. "You have 1 hour," Clark said. "Release all remaining human prisoners to the landing zone outside your capital city. Surrender the scientists responsible for the experiments, or we will turn your world to ash." "You cannot destroy an entire planet," Veltar protested. "We have billions of innocent civilians. You should have thought about that before you started." "Torturing our kids," Clark replied. 1 hour. The transmission ended. Clark turned to her fleet commanders. "Begin the assault. Priority is rescuing those children. Everything else is secondary." The attack began with Captain Mitchell's stealth. Ships. The USS Retribution and 50 other invisible vessels slipped through the planet's outer defenses like ghosts. Their job was to disable the shield generators and weapon platforms that protected the capital city. "Targets acquired," Mitchell reported. "Beginning attack run." The first sign of the assault was the sudden failure of the planetary defense grid. Shield generators exploded in balls of fire. Weapon platforms went silent. The Zephyrian military tried to respond, but their communications were jammed and their sensors were blinded. "Phase 2, Clark ordered. "All ships, attack formation." The main human fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly above the Zephyrian homeworld. 3,000 ships appeared as if from nowhere, their weapons already charging. The sight was terrifying and beautiful. At the same time, Captain Paul Johnson's converted merchant ship was part of the assault fleet. The former cargo captain had become a seasoned warrior over the past months. His crew of volunteers had rescued dozens of human children from Zephyrian ships. "Remember," Johnson told his weapons crew, "we're not here for revenge. We're here for those kids. Don't let anger make you sloppy." But it was hard not to feel anger. Johnson had seen what the Zephyrians had done to human children. He had held crying kids who had nightmares about alien experiments. He had watched doctors try to reverse genetic modifications that should never have been made. The orbital battle was brief but decisive. The Zephyrian defense fleet was overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Human ships poured plasma fire and missiles into enemy vessels until space around the planet was filled with burning wreckage. "Planetary defenses neutralized," reported the fleet tactical officer. "Beginning ground assault." Hundreds of transport ships descended toward the planet's surface. They carried thousands of human Marines, all volunteers who had signed up to rescue the children. Leading them was Captain Lisa Rodriguez and her assault teams. The capital city of the Zephyrian homeworld was a wonder of crystal architecture. Tall spires reached toward the sky, their surfaces reflecting sunlight in beautiful patterns. But the humans were not there for sightseeing. "Landing zone secured," Rodriguez reported as her troops established a perimeter. No sign of the prisoners yet. Sergeant Maria Santos led her team toward the central research complex. The building was enormous, a crystal pyramid that rose from the heart of the city. Intelligence suggested the remaining human children were being held in the lower levels. "Heavy resistance expected," Santos warned her Marines. "The Zephyrians will fight hard to protect their research." The assault on the research complex was the final battle of the war. Zephyrian soldiers had barricaded themselves inside, determined to make a last stand. But they were facing human Marines who had spent months fighting to save children. "Breach and clear," Santos ordered. Her team used explosives to blow holes in the crystal walls. They poured through the gaps, their weapons blazing. The Zephyrians fought back desperately, but they were no match for human fury. Santos fought her, way through corridor after corridor, searching for the children. The research complex was a maze of laboratories and holding cells. In one room, she found evidence of the experiments that had been conducted there. Computer screens showed brain scans of human children. Medical equipment was stained with blood. "These sick monsters," one of her Marines whispered. Santos found the children in the deepest part of the complex. 37 human kids, aged from 2 years old to 16, were being held in a secured laboratory. They were alive but showed signs of severe trauma. The youngest was a little boy named Tommy, who couldn't be more than 3 years old. He was sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth and crying for his mother. When he saw Santos and her team, he tried to hide. "It's okay," Santos said gently, removing her helmet so the boy could see her face. "I'm human like you. We're here to take you home." Tommy looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. "Are you really human?" he asked in a tiny voice. "Yes," Santos replied. "We came to get you, all of you." The reunion of the children with their families would happen later. First, Santos had to make sure they were safe. Her team carefully carried the kids out of the research complex while other Marines eliminated the remaining Zephyrian scientists. Dr. Jennifer Stone was waiting at the landing zone with her medical team. She examined each child carefully, documenting their injuries and the experiments they had endured. "How are they?" Rodriguez asked. "Physically, they'll recover," Dr. Stone replied. "But the psychological trauma is severe. Some of these children have been prisoners for over 3 months. They've been subjected to procedures designed to break their will and alter their personalities." Rodriguez felt her anger growing again. "What about the genetic modifications?" 3 of the children show signs of alien DNA integration, Dr. Stone said. "We'll need to get them to Earth immediately for treatment." While the medical teams worked, Admiral Clark received a final transmission from the Zephyrian government. Prime Executor Veltar appeared on the screen one last time, but he was no longer alone. Other members of the Zephyrian High Council stood behind him, all looking defeated. "The children have been released," Veltar said. "Our scientists are prepared to surrender. We ask for mercy for our civilians." Clark looked at the alien leader with cold eyes. "Your scientists will face trial for war crimes. Your military will be disbanded. Your government will be dissolved. As for your civilians, ... double quotes, she paused, they will live. But your empire is finished." "What do you mean?" Veltar asked. "The Zephyrian Empire no longer exists," Clark replied. "Your colonies will be occupied by human forces. Your military technology will be destroyed. Your people will be relocated to supervised settlements where they can be monitored. You cannot imprison an entire species." Veltar protested. "Watch us," Clark said. "You prove that your species cannot be trusted around children. Therefore, you will never again have the opportunity to harm them." The war was over, but the consequences would last for generations. The Zephyrian Empire, which had existed for thousands of years, was completely destroyed. Their homeworld was occupied by human forces. Their colonies were taken over and their populations relocated. The rescued children were taken back to Earth for treatment. The physical injuries healed quickly, but the psychological scars would take much longer. Support groups were established for the families. Therapists worked with the kids to help them process their trauma. The children who had been genetically modified received special attention. Scientists worked around the clock to reverse the alien changes. Some of the modifications could be undone, but